everyone, Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Good morning, Rush Nation. Here we are. We're on the eve of week one. Week one starts tonight. Very, very exciting time. And then that means the return of the matchups pod. Now, if you're new to 5 Yard Rush, if you're new to fantasy football, if you're just new to this sort of style of pod, that's absolutely fine. I'm going to explain what this is. I'm going to go through all the games of this week, and I'm going to tell you where I've got every fantasy relevant player ranked. To help me with this, I'm going to have my ranks. This is the Fantasy Pros experts platform that I submit my ranks into the expert consensus ranking every single week. These are my week one ranks, and then every couple of games, I'm going to either scroll down or change the screen. So you can see here my quarterbacks. So I'm showing the first of the 22 on the screen now. Everyone else from there, not really overly fantasy relevant. So I'll leave this up for people, if you're watching this on YouTube, to get a visual of all these. But don't worry, I'm going to tell you where I've got all these players ranked as I go through and tell you a little bit about each game. So how the format of this show goes, I'm going to preview every game in order of kickoff. I'm going to give you the Vegas current, and that's current as of Thursday morning British time. The current over-under on points. And the reason I do that, high-scoring games means potentially more fantasy points. Low-scoring games means potentially less fantasy points. Tells you a little bit of how Vegas is viewing the game script. And then who the favorite is, because that's also going to tell you a little bit about game script. If you've got a team that's going to be projected to win by quite a lot, they're more likely to run the football more. If you've got a team that are scheduled to lose by a lot, they're likely to throw the football more. So there's some correlations, and this all kind of builds the picture to these ranks and how I view all these games. I should also specify these ranks are half-point PPR, so it's a good bridge. So if you've got players in here that are going to catch more balls, then they would be higher ranked in PPR. Alternatively, the running backs will also sort of shoot up the boards a bit more. So the advice I'm going to give you is potentially just in that middle, because every league is different. But it should give you a good flavor, at least, to think about setting your lineups later today and where you should play these players. So let's get started. It's a lot to get through. You're probably going to have to hit pause a few times as you're listening to this or watching this to take note of the players, or if you're sort of stuck on some start sits. And it's worth noting that this is where I would build all my start sit decisions from, is from these sorts of ranks. So we're going to start with tonight's game. It's an absolute doozy to start with. It's the Chiefs versus the Ravens. The over-under is set at 47, which is a reasonably high-scoring game. The Vegas line has the Chiefs winning this by 3 points. So let's start with, I'll go through the Chiefs first. I've got Mahomes, as you can see on the screen. He is my quarterback 4. I have Pacheco as my RB10. I have concerns over the whole season, but not really starting for week one. I'm not going to talk about P. Ryan. He's outside my top 50 RBs. He's not a player you should be starting this week by any stretch of the imagination. Rashee Rice is my wide receiver 7. Xavier Worthy is my wide receiver 54. He's in that range of, in a deeper league with more flex starts, he's worth a go. I'd say anywhere from like 48 to 60-ish is always worth it if there's potential upside with a player like Worthy. There absolutely is. If you're playing in a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league, these are players that you probably won't need to be or consider starting. But if you're playing in a 3 wide receiver league, or if you're playing in a 3 wide receiver, say 2 flex, 3 flex league, then you will want to be considering these players, which is why I kind of go to those sort of round about 60, 70. 70 is sort of my cutoff. And I don't really consider 70 relevant. I kind of think anything north of 60, there has to be a good story to start them, like you think there's a potential upside play. We don't have all the information yet. It's week one. So there's some players north of 60 I'll mention, but there won't be too many. Kelsey is my tight end 3 on the week. The Chiefs are my DST 19, so I hope you've got a better option this week, even if you pick one up off the bench. And Harrison Butker is my kicker 2 of the week. Moving over to the Ravens, Jackson is my quarterback 3 for the week. Henry is my RB 15 of the week. Justice Hill is my RB 48. I think he's going to get some work, but he's not a player I would be starting in almost any format this week. Unless you're playing a format with kick returns, I think he could have some success there. Flowers is my wide receiver 38. Don't think this is a great matchup for Flowers straight out of the bat. I've got Bateman at circa sort of wide receiver 60-ish. That's the kind of range I have him in. I keep moving him up and down a few spots. He's going to be somewhere around there. I think, again, he's interesting as an upside play in PPR. Maybe in a half point or a standard, he shouldn't be really near the starting lineup. But I think he could get some volume that could make him interesting. Mark Andrews is my Titan 5. He's a definite must play. I have the Baltimore Ravens slightly ahead of the Chiefs at DST 18. Most people would have selected them. You might just have to lump it, but it's going to be a tough one to get some serious points out of them this week. And Justin Tucker is my kicker 4. So both kickers easily viable, both DSTs probably not in this one. Let's move over to the Eagles versus the Packers. This one's in Brazil, so this adds a bit of extra flavor. You know, these teams have never played in Brazil before. They're starting week 1 cold, and then they're having to travel. That definitely adds a bit of extra spice to this game in particular. The over/under is set at 49, which is high. I don't know how I necessarily feel about it. Like, if this game was in the US, I'd sit there and go, yeah, I can see a pathway to 49. Has the Eagles favorite by 2. They didn't end the season well, so that's going to be a really interesting one to see how it pans out. This game has lots of intrigue. The Packers definitely finished last season the better of the 2 teams. We'll go to the Eagles first. Hurts is my QB2 on the week, as you can see on the screen. Barkley, my RB6. Again, the player I have concerns about, but I'm not so worried out of the gate. The Packers aren't the best at stopping the run. I think this could be a fruitful week for Saquon Barkley. A.J. Brown is my wide receiver 5. Devonta Smith, my wide receiver 27. This is a very narrow team. I don't need to talk about any of the fringe players because they're not going to be fantasy relevant. Dallas Goedert is tight end 9. The Eagles DST 17 because I think the Packers will score points. And Elliott is my kicker 6 on the week. Moving over to the Packers, I've got Jordan Love, as you can see on the screen. He is my QB 11. Josh Jacobs is my RB 11. Jaden Reed is my wide receiver 39. Romeo Dobbs, my wide receiver 47. Watson, my wide receiver 48. And they're all that sort of range. You might see when I flip it over, it might be slightly different. I prepped this and then have made some small changes, but that's the sort of range. I think they all cannibalize each other, and it's really hard to do a projection on the Packers because they can roll with a hot hand, and then that means that one could end up with a lot more touches. But it's really hard to kind of project how that goes. So I have gone with a really even spread of targets and results here. If you know better or have a feeling that's better, then you should absolutely go with that. I'm just explaining where I am with all of this. Luke Musgrave is my tight end 24 of the week. I just don't think he's going to get enough volume to make him fantasy relevant. And then the Packers are my DST 26, so stay away from them. And Narveson, we're talking about a new country. He's a new kicker. We don't know anything about him. He's my kicker 31. Kickers I don't have a history or a pattern on in a new environment. I don't tend to rank very highly to start with until I see they do things a lot better. And that's a consistent trend of travel across most rankers. So yeah, that's why he's that low, even though he could easily score some points. He could also miss a few, and that's why I've got that baked in there. Okay, now we're going to move on to the Sunday games. And just to do that, I'm just going to quickly change this for the next game, just to show you the rest of my QB rankings so you can jot those down and take note. Dolphins versus Jags. The over-under is 49, which is nice and high. Got the Dolphins winning this by 3.5. I feel like that's a bit light. You know, I feel like they could definitely win this by more than 3.5. But start with the Dolphins. I've got the Tua at QB 15. I personally think they get out in front and then they're going to run the ball and kind of manage it. I think Hill will put on a clinic and then they might shut Tua down early in the second half. Not necessarily to bring on a backup, but just to contain how he plays, which is why I've got him at 15 this week. I've got Achan at RB 18 and Mostert RB 23. I think they cannibalize each other. I think you might see Mostert strong. Achane comes more into it in the second half. Kind of what we saw last year. They're really hard to predict, but that's kind of where I am. I think Achane can take advantage of the tired legs, and he'll end up with more points. But if you feel like Achane is going to get a lot more touches, then definitely you should lead into that and lead into him and fade Mostert a little bit more. Hill is my wide receiver 1. I think this is a good opportunity for him to really exploit. Slightly tough matchup, but I think he'll make the most of it. He's matchup proof in particular. But Jalen Waddle, wide receiver 28. I've got the Miami DST at 21. I do think that the Jags will put some points up in this game. I don't think they'll commit a lot of turnovers. And then Sanders is the kicker 9 this week. I've got Trevor Lawrence as my quarterback 7. I think they're going to play from behind. I think he's going to need to throw the ball quite considerably in order to make the most out of this. So I think you're going to see this game script of high scoring points, Dolphins winning by a bit. You're going to see this is why I lean into this narrative of Lawrence having the better game statistically, because he's going to need to. He's going to need to throw the ball a lot more, which will yield more fantasy points, and that's why I have Lawrence over Tua. So if you're sort of unfamiliar with, okay, you're projecting the Dolphins to win, and yet you've got Tua quite a bit behind Lawrence. Well, that's why I'm chasing the game script here. So Lawrence at QB 7, Travis Etienne at RB 12. And then I've got these 3 wide receivers. It's hard to kind of see where it goes. Kirk is at 33. Thomas is around about 45, and Gabe Davis is at 58. That's kind of where I am with these wide receivers. I can see a pathway to Kirk and Thomas maybe doing a little bit better than that, but it all depends on Evan Ingram, who I have as my tight end 2 on the week. I actually have him outperforming Kelsey on high volume, and I think in your PPR league he could challenge the tight end 1 overall this week. I think they'll get some joy over the middle on the Dolphins. Jags DST 27. I think the Dolphins put up a boatload of points, and I have Little again, another kicker I don't know too much about. He's kicker 28 for me this week. I'm just going to switch over to showing the first bit of my running back rankings for the week. So again, those of you who are watching the stream can get a good view of that. Oh, just extending the screen a little bit so you can see it. There we go. You should see the first 22 names on there now. Okay, Falcons versus Steelers. This is scheduled to be one of the lower point scoring games of the week at 42. You have so we're expecting the Steelers defense to put up. Falcons favored by 3.5. Again, I think that one's pretty mild. If I was sort of betting this, and I'm not a betting man, but if I was, I'd definitely be taking the Falcons and the points here. I think they could easily go over that. Kirk Cousins, I have a QB 13 for the Falcons. Bijan Robinson at RB 8. I've got Tyler Algier at RB 36. Again, I've been talking about this for a few weeks. I think Algier is going to cap a little bit of Bijan's upside. That doesn't mean that Robinson's not going to be a great player and he's not going to put a great week up. But I think that Algier is going to stop Robinson from being an RB3, RB4 overall to around RB8 this week. And I think especially if the Falcons have got some success and they've got points in the bank, I think they're going to lean on Algier and take away a little bit from Robinson. So that's why I have Algier touching that RB 36, which makes him a little bit fantasy relevant. In standard, that means he's absolutely relevant. In PPR, probably a little bit less, but it kind of depends who you've got. He's on that sort of fringe of flex in this position. So one to keep an eye on there, Tyler Algier, RB 36. Drake London is my wide receiver 10. Darnell Mooney, my wide receiver 49. Pitts is currently my tight end 12. Now, he is on the injury report. He is questionable. If he remains on that report, even if he starts, if he is still on the report Saturday as questionable, I will probably move Mooney up in my ranks and I'll move Pitts down. I think then I'm not relying on the second tight end, the backup tight end, to get looks. I think they'll spread the ball more, and I think it will go to Darnell Mooney. So I can see in a pathway in the weekend, on the track would be Mooney going upwards and Pitts going downwards. That's kind of why I've got them where I've got them. That injury is stopping me from putting Pitts higher this week. I've got the Falcons as a DST 14. There's a case to maybe moving them up a little bit, given what we've got with the Steelers, but I feel comfortable there at 14. And then we've got Koo as the kicker 7 this week. As we move over to the Steelers, there isn't too many overly fantasy relevant players. We've got Wilson as my QB 28, which means he's just barely startable in a Superflex. In a 1 QB league, he absolutely is not. I've got Najee Harris as the RB 29 and Jaylen Warren, who is questionable at the RB 35. I think if Warren was healthy, I'd be flipping these ranks, but I think you're going to see a two-headed sword. People really bullish on Najee Harris. I'm just concerned that Warren is the more explosive back. He recorded more explosive yards from that backfield, and he is the bigger playmaker. Najee Harris is a bit more of a plodder and relies volume to be relevant. If Warren doesn't go, Najee Harris moves up in my ranks. Warren falls out of my ranks. It's pretty standard. But at the moment, I got him relatively close. If Warren was coming into this healthy, as I said, I'd probably have Warren over Harris. But I think you've got to give Harris some respect that he's fit and he's ready to go. And Warren might not be. Pickens is my lead and the only receiver that I'm even touching in fantasy football for the Steelers. I have him at wide receiver 21 this week. I have Pat Freiermuth at tight end 13. I think he's due a good week, and it wouldn't surprise me if he shot over that this week as well. I have the Steelers at the DST 12. I actually have them over the Falcons. I expect the Steelers DST to make plays. I expect them to keep them in the game with sacks, tackles for loss, maybe even some turnovers. And that's why I have the Steelers higher. So I think the Steelers lose the game. I think they'll give up more points, but I actually think they'll make more noteworthy plays. And that's why I have them higher in my ranks this week. I have Boswell as the kicker as my kicker 18, so not something you need to worry about this week. All right, going to scroll down a little bit to my next RB ranks, and I'll do to about 50 odd, and then I rank about 100 players in each position except quarterback, so and kicker and DST because you can't. Tight ends probably not quite that many as well, but definitely wide receivers and running backs. I do over 100 players. I rank close to 150 actually. Right, Giants and Vikings. So this is a really low over and under. It's the 4th lowest. It's at 41. The Vikings are favorite by 1.5, so they expect this one to be really, really, really close. I'll start with the Giants. Daniel Jones, I've got him at QB 25. I think he needs time before we see the best out of him. So in a Superflex league, he's viable. In a non-Superflex league, he is not. Devin Singletary is my RB 20. I fully expect him to get a heavy workload and to pound it. Even if, and again, the close game, he's expected to get a good amount of work. Malik Neighbors is my wide receiver 26 in this week, and then Wandale Robinson, my wide receiver 66. Wandale Robinson will shoot up in PPR. He'll probably go up about 20 spots. So in a PPR league on volume alone, but he's in the slot, it will be short distance stuff. But in a PPR league, that doesn't matter because he gets 1 point for every catch. He shoots up these ranks quite significantly. I have Theo Johnson as the starting tight end. I have him at tight end 29. I just don't really know what to expect. This is a bit of a new offense. We haven't seen Daniel Jones play with too many of these players. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens here. But I do have the Giants as the DST 7. I think they will, with that front, they will attack Sam Darnold and they will be successful in getting some turnover-worthy plays. So I really like the Giants DST as a play this week, but I do have Graham Gano as my kicker at 25. Moving over to the Vikings, I have Sam Darnold as my QB 24. Again, fresh cold. I think I just don't think he's startable in a 1 QB, but he's definitely startable in a 2 QB league or Superflex league. I have Aaron Jones as my RB 24. I think Ty Chandler is going to take some work from him, which is why I have Ty Chandler at RB 42. So I think that caps the upside. I also don't think this is going to be a blowout. And then therefore, I don't think there'll be times I think the Giants will be winning this game. And therefore, I think that'll be difficult for Jones, and they'll put the ball in Donald's hands and go to the playmakers who are very much the wide receivers in this team. Jefferson I've got as wide receiver 9. I think he's going to be fine. I think he is QB proof, as we saw tail end of last year. I've got Jordan Addison at wide receiver 41. He is questionable. It looks like he's going to go. But he has missed a lot of preseason, so he's at wide receiver 41. I have Jalen Naylor around about wide receiver 50. Again, similar story. He is questionable, but he played a lot more in the preseason. So I fully expect Naylor to hopefully go. But that news did shock me yesterday. He has a really good matchup, Naylor. Again, I've written this in my Fantasy Pros column, which goes live today. Has a really, really good matchup there that can be exploited against a rookie third round cornerback. So I think he could really exploit that matchup in the slot. And I think Sam Darnold won't go too deep. I think he'll be more worried about losing the football. So I think he will keep it quite safe. Johnny Munt, tight end 23. He's a bit of a punt. He could actually exceed that. I don't really know what to expect. We've never really talked about Johnny Munt as a tight end that's viable in fantasy football until today. So here we are, folks. It really is week 1. And then we've got the Vikings. DST 11, I think, again, they can get some turnovers and make some plays. So both DSTs are good here. And Rijkaard, the kicker, I've got a 26. Again, not a kicker I know too much about. New experience. You just don't know what you're going to get. Kickers is a really tough position, and you always want to bow to experience than these new upstart kickers. You very rarely see rookie kickers blow it out of the park. Yes, there's exceptions. You don't need to at me, but there's more failures than there are successes when it comes to kickers. Right, I'm going to amend this to show the next few running backs. Okay, so Saints versus Panthers. Over-under's 42, which is, again, in sort of the 4th, 5th lowest total of the week. Saints are favored by 4, which is about 3rd or 4th most this week. So, again, it's a good number of points. They expect the Saints to win comfortably. 4 points doesn't seem like comfortable. That's over a field goal. That's pretty comfortable. And I expect them to probably even beat that. But having said that, this is a low-scoring game for fantasy, and there aren't that many fantasy relevant players. So I'm going to go through this. Both QBs for me in this game are not viable in 1 QB, and they're barely viable in 2 QB. I have Carr as the QB 29 for the Saints. Kamara is my RB9. Again, he probably gets a bump, potentially a little bit more in PPR, but in half point PPR is my RB9. Olave is my wide receiver 29. Shakir is my wide receiver 36. I think he has an exceptional matchup this week to exploit and really make the most of. So I expect him to do that. And, I think that 36 is a pretty safe floor. I think the consensus has him around about 50, 60. I actually think there's a chance he could finish in the top 12 because that matchup is that good. He could favor it, but it requires the offense to really get clicking. The other thing that could stop it is if they go up by a lot and they don't want to chase the deep ball. If Shaheed doesn't have the points by then, he's not going to be getting a lot of garbage time points. That's the worry. But having said that, I think this is a good game for him to exploit. And if he gets the early points deep, then this could be a really good week for Rashid Shaheed. So keep an eye on that one. I got Juwan Johnson. He's back. Tight end 14 this week. And Taysom Hill, tight end 18. Really don't know what we're going to see out of Taysom Hill. New offensive coordinator. Are they going to just use him as a gadget play and vulture touchdowns from the goal line? Are we going to see him actually line up as a tight end? Are we going to see him throw the ball? We don't really know. So I've gone at 18. I've gone quite conservative. But his ranking is all over the map. I've seen him as high as like 7. I've seen him as low as like 30. And I can't really argue anybody that puts him anywhere because he could be anything. So he is a wild card. Saints have got us the DST2. This is a perfect matchup. I think they get lots of turnovers and they feel comfortable in this one. And Group as the kicker is my kicker 12 this week. As for the Panthers, Bryce Young is my lowest ranked starting quarterback. He's quarterback 32 this week. I think this is the worst matchup he could start with, or one of the worst. The Saints have a really good D. I think they're going to struggle. Chuba Hubbard, I think, will be the star on offense. He's my RB 14 this week and feel like he'll definitely make some gains on the ground. You can run at the Saints. That'll be where they probably get the most success. I've got Deontay Johnson at wide receiver 52. That's going to shock a lot of people. He's up against Marshawn Lattimore, who's one of the best shutdown corners in the game. And that's going to be tricky unless Bryce Young is laser accurate. And I think, actually, to be honest, I think Canales, from what I saw last year with the Bucs, I think he'll strip it back, won't go too big with the deep ball. So he might funnel Johnson some volume catches, but I struggle to see where he's going to beat Lattimore on the outside, even though he is a great receiver who gets a lot of catches. That matchup just screams of trouble. So you might see the success go to Phelan, who I have at wide receiver 55. Tight end position in Carolina is always one to ignore. Tommy Tremble is my tight end 32, and to be honest, I could probably rank him lower than that. Panthers have got a 29 and Pinheiro, the kicker, at 29. Not positions probably players you have rostered, and nor do you ever need to worry about them. I moved my rankings to wide receivers so you can see these on the screen. I'll keep it up for the next couple of teams to talk about. Bengals versus Patriots. This is tied for the least amount of points scored. Over under set of 40.5. And the Bengals are favored to win by 8, which doesn't give you a lot of confidence in the Patriots. Vegas have absolutely no confidence in the Patriots, and that's going to be a tricky one when it comes to ranking them, as you're going to see very shortly. Burrow is my QB5 on the week. I've got the running back situation is really convoluted, so I've Chase Brown at 33, Zach Moss at 41 at RB, and I think that's a really tricky one to guess. I think Brown probably takes the lead, but I think they're going to give both guys a go. And I think especially if they are predicted to win by 8 or more, I think they're just going to run the football. They could get really high volume that could allow them to actually usurp and jump both of those positions. If one of them gets favored over the other, they could actually end up as a top 12 player this week, purely on volume, because I fully expected just to run the ball a lot in the second half. But I don't know which way it's going to go. So I have been really conservative with my rank. I don't have a feeling. I feel like Brown will get more work, which is why I have him higher. But I think, they paid Zach Moss. I think they're going to just see what they've got. And this is the perfect game to put them both in game script, just see what happens. Jamar Chase returned to practice yesterday. The holdout is over. He is the wide receiver 8 on this week. Higgins, my wide receiver 19. And Yoshi Vass, who I got wrong when I talked about preseason, my wide receiver 61 on the week. He's kind of on the fringe. I could see him again, garbage time points, if they're looking to just rest the receivers. He could really benefit from this. Mike Gesicki, tight end 26. He's not really ever done it in fantasy football in volume-wise, so this will be interesting to see how he gets on in this offense. I do have the Bengals as my DST1 and Evan McPherson as my kicker 1 this week. As for the Patriots, I have Jacoby Brissett as my quarterback 31. Ramondre Stevenson is my RB 25, and Antonio Gibson is my RB 45. Stevenson is probably the only player I'm starting this week with any confidence on the Patriots, and I don't even know if I would put any, but I guess he's startable. I feel like I can start Ramondre Stevenson. I don't think I can start anyone else. The only wide receiver I've got ranked in the top 80 here is Demario Douglas, and I think I've got him at wide receiver 47. And if I'm honest, I don't even know if I want to start him. I've got him that high, I think, because I had to put someone in the top 50, and he was the number I picked. But I don't feel good about it, and I don't think I'd be playing him. Because they have got draft picks and maybe they come along sooner, and we'll see what happens. I don't like this matchup for the Patriots at all. Hunt Henry is my tight end 23. He could usurp that. He gets a touchdown in there. He jumps up quite considerably, but this is going to be a rough one for the Patriots, who I have as my DST 31 on the week, and Joey Sly is my kicker 32 on the week. And the only thing that's going to raise the Patriots DST is turnover wherever he plays, which could happen. It really could happen, especially if the Bengals start to bench starters, which could happen in this game. Bears versus Titans. And before I get into that, I'll move my ranks a little bit more because I will go deeper on the wide receivers so that we cover all of them. Bears versus Titans. The over-under is 45. Bears to win this by 4, which shocked me. I thought this was a closer game than that. I guess a lot of people are loving what the Bears are doing and not really loving what the Titans are doing, which I think is strange. I think this game is a lot closer than the Bears to win by 4, but we will see what happens. I've got Caleb Williams in his debut at QB 16. Again, it's just a bit of debut. You don't really know entirely what you're going to get. He's looked great in the preseason, but the Titans D is no joke, and I think they can definitely make it difficult. You got DeAndre Swift as my RB 27. Again, I think they will stop the run quite considerably here, and I think this game will be closer than the bookies have. And I actually, as a result, have Swift significantly lower because I do think that they will need to get creative with their running backs, and they'll use the likes of Herbert and Johnson to perhaps change it up and get and move the chains, which is why I have Herbert at 51, Johnson 55. Wouldn't shock me if either of those outplay those positions, those rankings. DJ Moore is my wide receiver 22. He's got a bit of a tough assignment this week, but I think he will overcome that. Keenan Allen, wide receiver 37, and Roman Dunze, wide receiver 63. I'm staying away from Dunze. I kind of want to see what happens and how things play out before I sit there and commit to him playing every week. So he's my wide receiver 63 this week. I am staying away from the tight ends. Komet I have at tight end 22, Everett tight end 33. I think they cannibalize each other. But I do have the Bears as the DST3. I think they will get some turnovers as the Titans are forced to throw the ball more down the field. I think they'll make some plays, especially someone like Jalen Johnson can definitely make plays. And then Santos is the kicker 14. So he's startable if you've got him. You shouldn't feel too worried about starting him, but I don't see the upside in him challenging for top spot this week. Moving over to the the Titans. Will Levis is my QB 20 this week. I will think he will get vertical, throw the ball down the field. The RB situation is really interesting now. I have Spears at 28 and Pollard at 37. I've seen people rank it the other way, and that's absolutely fine. Pollard is the one who got the bag and got the money, so I can see that definitely going that way. So as a result of that, if you see ranks the other way, go with who you trust. I just see Spears being a little bit more dynamic. I even think Pollard could end up with more touches and Spears still be a better player. That is more than possible. Calvin Ridley is the pick of the wide receivers here. I've got him at wide receiver 23. I think he's got a great matchup. I've read about this on Fantasy Pros. I think he's got a matchup he can exploit. And DeAndre Hopkins is a terrible matchup. He is slated to play. He is questionable, but it looks like he's going to play. I've got him at wide receiver 55 this week. He's someone I will be fading in all contests this week. Chig is a tight end, tight end 31. It's always this hype around Chig, but he's never delivered. Until he does, it's a tough one to swallow. The Titans I have at 23 DST. Falk is the kicker 27 on the week. Right. I'm going to move over to more wide receivers. Just move them down. See, again, you can see them on the screen. All right. Bills versus Cardinals. The over-under is 48, so really high. And Bills tied for the second highest winning margin of the week by 6.5. Again, not really a surprise. And again, I think because of this, it's really hard to kind of rank the wide receivers. So I sit there and have Allen as the QB1, but I don't have any of his receivers inside the top 40 this week. And that's because I think he's going to use Cook and he's going to use Kincaid. And they're going to be the ones that propel him. Plus, I think he'll run touchdowns in with his legs. And I think that will propel him even further up the rankings. So I have Allen as the QB1. I've James Cook as my RB7 this week. And then I have Shakir as my wide receiver 44, who's just gone off the screen. You see on the screen now, Coleman as my wide receiver 61. Samuel is my wide receiver 55. So that's kind of where I've got them this week. So tricky, but that's where I have them. As you can see on the screen. Kincaid I have as tight end 6. I'm more worried about him longer term, but for this game, I think it's a good matchup. The Bills DST this week is 15. I do think Kyler can hurt them a little bit, but I can see them jump up from there, and I could see them definitely climbing the ranks quite significantly if they get some turnovers. Cardinals, it's again really thin tree here. There's not many to talk about. Kyler Murray is my quarterback 12 on the week, so I think he'll make plays. James Conner, my RB22. I think the Bills will stuff the run. Marv Harrison Jr. is my wide receiver 25, and he's the only wide receiver in the top 80 I have for the Arizona Cardinals. Trey McBride, my tight end 4. I have the Cardinals ranked dead last. I forgot to put the kicker on here. He's in my bottom 2 or 3, so I wouldn't worry about him either. So really all I'm starting here is Murray, Connor, Harrison, McBride, and that's all you need to worry about, I think, for the Cardinals for quite a while. A lot of talk of Greg Dortch. I've got him outside my top 80 this week. This is not the matchup to get cute and start chasing Greg Dortch. Colts versus Texans. Before I do that, let me pull up some tight ends. So pull up the tight ends. Right, so got the Colts first. Oh, so the over-under is 49, which is the second most of the week. The Texans are favored by 3. They expect this one to be reasonably close, and I think that's a good pick. I think this is going to be a really, really exciting game, and one I'm looking forward to watching in great detail, because I think both these teams have got lots of offensive weapons. This could be a really fun one. Richardson is my QB6 on the week. With the legs, he could do some damage. Jonathan Taylor, my RB4 on the week. Michael Pittman Jr., my wide receiver 16. Josh Downs, my wide receiver 76. He is questionable. People are probably going to ask me what I was going to do in this situation. I think I'm going to fade the wide receiver 2 on the Colts altogether and just go with Richardson, Taylor, Pittman, and not really touch anyone else. I don't want to touch Mo Cox, is my tight end 46. The Colts have never really historically used a lot of tight end usage, so stay away from that. But then they're the sort of ones that they'll dink in a touchdown, and Mo Cox will score a touchdown and end up as the tight end 20. That is, if you're chasing like just a touchdown bet, as in I want a tight end who's going to score a touchdown and finish inside the top 20. Mo Cox is probably the guy who is on waivers, who is free, that you can do that. But I have him at 46. I have betting against that, but wouldn't shock me if it happened. Of the Colts is the 28th ranked defense, but I have Matt Gay, who is questionable at the moment, but I think he will go as the kicker 10 on the week. As for the Texans, I've got Stroud as the QB 8 on the week. I've got Mixon as the RB 13. The wide receivers are really interesting. I have all three pretty high ranked. Collins is the wide receiver 17. Diggs is the wide receiver 35. Dell is the wide receiver 38. So all those players inside the top 38, all three are startable for me in leagues. So you can feel pretty good starting all of those. Schultz I have as a tight end 21 as a consequence. I think he's, if you can find a better option, that's who you want to go for. I think he's a tight end or he's a touchdown or bust play this week. The Texans I have at DST 16, but I have Fairbairn as the kicker 3 this week. Okay. So let's go to more tight ends. Right, Chargers v Raiders. This is, again, one of those games tied for one of the lowest points totals at 40.5. So, again, not going to see a lot of point scores. The Chargers are favored by 3. Again, I don't really have anyone really highly ranked in this game. There's one player who is touching first, number 1 in, top 12 in his position. And the DST, the Chargers. Spoiler alert. So the Chargers, I have Justin Herbert, QB 23. Worried about the injury. I know he's better than that, but I am worried about the injury. I'm worried about how much they'll let him rip. So I think they'll run the ball a lot, which is why I've got Gus Edwards at RB 34, and J.K. Dobbins at RB 40. I think both of those will kind of cannibalize each other to a fair whack. I do have Josh Palmer, wide receiver 20. I think he's severely underranked, and I feel pretty good about ranking him there. I've got Ladd McConkey at wide receiver 65. I think if you're going to look at players outside the top 60 who can reach up and do something, Ladd McConkey is probably one of those guys. Tight end position is one to fade here. Hurst is at tight end 34. This is the tight end 35. I really genuinely don't know what to do, so I've ranked them both together. I think they cannibalize each other. Just for context, like tight end 34, tight end 35, I have them getting about 4-ish points. Like, it's just not really relevant. Chargers DST5, definitely start them. I talked about them on the waiver wire show, so I hope you have picked them up and use them for the first 3 weeks of the season if you need to, especially if you've got the Ravens. They've got a tough start. Dicker is the kicker 17 on the week. The Raiders, this is a tough one. So I've got Raiders as Minshew at quarterback 28. So again, he's barely a super flex start if needed. White is the RB 30. I think a lot of people project that Zamir White is just going to have all this backfield, and I just don't see it. Because they brought Alexander Mattison in and they paid him money, so I think he's going to cannibalize. He's my RB 46. And I think the negative game script, I think they're going to have to throw the ball more, which is why I don't think either of them are going to have a beyond the top 30 week. Adams is my wide receiver 13. He'd go probably slightly higher in PPR. Jacoby Myers, wide receiver 45. Again, he'd go slightly higher in PPR. I think both of these guys will get some good volume. I do have Bowers down as my tight end 20. I think that the way that Harbaugh will scheme it will make it really difficult to get points over the middle, and he'll make them go wide to get points. And so as a result, I'm not fancying Bowers to get a lot of success on his NFL debut. Could be totally wrong. Could be famous last words. Raiders I have at DST 22 and Carlson at kicker 21 on the week. Let's do meaningless tight ends. Why not? And then I'll switch it to DSTs and then kickers. We'll round up. Seahawks Broncos over under 42. Seahawks favored by 6. Again, this one's expected to be a blowout. So which is why I have Geno Smith as my QB9. I actually think he's going to put on a good performance. He's a good waiver wire ad this week. He's one you could definitely feel pretty comfortable with. And I think they'll get up to an early lead and manage it. And Geno's pretty good in that system of doing that. Kenneth Walker Jr. is my RB16 this week. Zach Charbonnet, my RB43. Again, I just think they're probably going to ease Kenneth Walker take some of that workload off if there's a big lead, and then they're going to let Charbonnet run the ball. That's the only reason I've got Walker down a little bit. Otherwise, he'd be touching my top 12 this week. Wide receivers, I've got Metcalf at wide receiver 18. I've actually got JSN at wide receiver 30, and Lockett's my wide receiver 52. I think it's a really bad matchup for Lockett. I think I talked about this in my Fantasy Pros column. He's a matchup I don't really like this week on the Broncos. So I think I'll go with Metcalf and JSN to be the ones this week to have some success. No Fant, I talked about on waiver wire, tight end 15. Think he's good volume. I think he'll get some plays and probably end up in the box at some point this week. That's touchdown when I say box. Seahawks, fourth best DST on the week. Myers as kicker 13, so you can feel pretty good starting him. As for the Broncos, this is a tricky one. We don't know a lot about this team, if we're truly honest, and I'm going to need to watch them really closely because I've found this team really hard to rank. I actually really like Bo Nix, and I've got him at QB 27, but he could finish higher than that. He's looked pretty good in preseason, but I think this is a tough matchup against that Seahawks D. I've got Javonte Williams as the RB19 and McLaughlin as the RB38. I think they'll feel pretty good with McLaughlin as the catching back, getting some success on first down, sort of to get over the line again and get those first downs, which is why I quite like McLaughlin as the RB38. He's kind of a sneaky play for me this week. I've got Sutton as the wide receiver 34. I think he'll have better weeks. I think this is a difficult week for him. I've got Josh Reynolds as the wide receiver 66. He's one of those players that I probably wouldn't talk about normally, but I think, again, if you're looking for players who are off the radar, who could usurp into a fantasy relevant role, Josh Reynolds is one of those. Or they also have Marvin Mims Jr. at wide receiver 69. He's another one that I think could also fill that role quite nicely. I don't like the tight end situation this week. I have Greg Dulcich at 27, Broncos at 24, and Will Lutz at 30. So none of those are starters in this realm. All right, we'll go to the DST. Put the DSTs up. This is how I've ranked my DSTs, and I'll scroll down after this one so you can see the bottom 10. Okay. Buccaneers v Commanders, over under 44. Bucks favored by 3.5, and I actually think the Bucks would be better than 3.5 if I'm totally honest. I think it's a tough opening game for the Commanders, and I think the Bucks line up really well against the Commanders. So I have Mayfield as my QB 10 this week. I have Rashad White as my RB3. I actually think they're going to just pound the rock. They look much better running the football, especially with Graham Barton in the center. I think they're going to be much better, more efficient running the football. I think you'll see Bucky Irving get some touches, but I think, Rashad White had a 3.6 yard per carry average, and he's going to get better than that. Mike Evans, I've got his wide receiver 6. He's got an elite matchup this week and one that he can easily take advantage of. Chris Godwin on volume is my wide receiver 14. Cade Otton, as a result, is my tight end 19. He's a kind of a touchdown or bust play this week. If you fancy him to get a touchdown, you can start him. If you don't, then don't. The Bucks is my DST 8. I think they will get some success turning over the football and stopping the run. Chase McLaughlin, my kicker 15 on the week. I've actually started Jaden Daniels, my quarterback 21 on the week. And I've talked about this a couple of times. But if you haven't watched those shows and you're watching this one, the Buccaneers do really well against the run. And as a result, they're really good against mobile quarterbacks. They shut down Jalen Hurts in the playoffs multiple times. They shut down Justin Fields. He had 3 yards rushing in week 1, week 2 in 2023. They really contain mobile quarterbacks. They collapse that pocket. They stop them from escaping the pocket, and they stop those runs. So given that's a big part of his weaponage and a big part of why he's projected to be a fantasy success, if you strip that away, where do we think he's going to be? I think he's going to be QB 21. And that's why I just don't think he's going to get a lot of yards on the ground this week. And I don't think he's going to be able to elevate that safe floor as a result. Brian Robinson Jr. I've got as the RB26 on the week. I do think they'll go to him. I do think he'll have some marginal success, but I don't think he'll put up big numbers. As a result, I've got Eckler at RB44. I'm fading him in all formats this week. Terry McLaurin is my wide receiver 32. I think until I really feel confident of Jaden Daniels' passing ability, I'm just not quite there yet, given he's brand new in the NFL. I can't really go any higher, and I haven't got anyone else in the Commanders ranked inside the top 70. So I think it'd be McLaurin. But I do have Ertz. I think they'll get success over the middle. So I think Ertz is a tight end 11. He's criminally underranked. I think they'll go over the middle. They'll use Ertz a lot, and they'll use him a lot early. So I think Ertz, it's a good volume play. maybe even a good bet to score a touchdown. I could even see him exceeding 11, to be perfectly honest with you. I think I'm probably even conservative, but I'm so far over the consensus on that one. I feel like if I go too much more, I've lost my mind. The Commanders is DST 25. Don't fancy him this week. And Cage York is their kicker 19. I imagine most people have got Cage York, but there you go. Let's pull the rest of these DSTs up so you can see them. Browns versus Cowboys, the last of the late slate games. We start with the Browns again. This is an over-under of 40.5. So again, tied for the lowest. They think the defenses, and these are two of the best defenses in the NFL. You can see the reason why both of these look like they're going to make it a bit of a defensive stalemate. The thing that shocked me is the Browns are favorite. I'm not sure I can get on board with that. I think that's a lot of disgrace to a Cowboys team that won a lot of games last season. And I know a lot of people don't like Mike McCarthy, but given the offensive talent, I'm not so sure. I have the Browns as favorite in this game, but there you go. Either way, I think it's going to be close. We'll start with those favored Browns. Watson, QB 19 on the week. Jerome Ford, RB 21. Donta Foreman, RB 39. I think both those guys will get work and they'll run the ball to great success as they continue to do. Mari Cooper is my wide receiver 31. Jerry Jeudy is my wide receiver 59. Again, he could be someone that kind of could usurp and beat that range, but that's kind of where I am with him at the moment. And Juku's a must start for me. He's my tight end 7 on the week. The Browns are my DST 10. I think they will force turnovers and they will make plays. And then Hopkins as my kicker, 20 on the week. And then with the Cowboys, Dak is my QB 16. I think he's going to take some sacks. I think he'll turn the football over a bit as well. And he won't have those sort of 300-400-yard passing games that we're kind of used to seeing. The running back situation here, I think Dowdle's going to get the nudge. I've got him at RB 31. I've got Elliott at RB 47. That's kind of where I have those two guys. Lamb is my wide receiver 2 on the week. Again, I'm kind of going on talent alone. Projects him that high. Cooks was wide receiver 43. I think he'll have a good supplemental week. And Ferguson is the tight end 10 this week. As you have the Cowboys at 6, I think they'll force more turnovers and can see them actually being a real beast on defense. And Brandon Aubrey is my kicker 8 on the week. Right, we move over to the Sunday Night Football game. I'm going to pull up the kickers so you can see how I've ranked my kickers. These ranks are also subject to change. I'm trying to find a good place to host them. The website's currently down. I might try and get one sorted before the weekend. It's tough for time, but I will have a place soon for where you can see and view these. So when I update them in real time, but these aren't going to change too radically unless it's big injury news or big. That's kind of the big reason it will change. So at least you've got an idea with this pod where my head's at, and there might be some changes, but hopefully it's not too drastic. Lions at Rams, over under 51, which is the most of any game this week. What a doozy Sunday Night Football is going to be. Week 1's going to be hard to stay awake for that one, but I'm going to have to try because it's going to be a phenomenal game. Lions are favored by 3.5. I don't think that's a big shock. The Lions, I think there's so many fantasy relevant players here. You got Goff as a QB 14. You can easily start him this week. Gibbs as the RB 17. That might shock people. I think you might see Montgomery get a lot of work here. He's my RB 32 this week as a result. I've got Amon-Ra St. Brown as my wide receiver 3, and I've got Jameson Williams as my wide receiver 63. And Jameson Williams, again, goes in that category of players who could easily usurp my ranks and finish in the top 36 or so. Don't really know yet. It's hard to project until you've seen it, but I can see a pathway to that happening. So I'm a bit higher on my season-long ranks on James Williams than I'm on my week 1 ranks. Sam Laporte is my tight end 1. Probably no shock for anyone there. Lions is my DST 20 because the Rams will score points. Bates as a new kicker, my kicker 16 on the week. Moving over to the Rams, I have Stafford as my QB 18 on the week. Kyron Williams is my RB6. I think they're going to get a lot of success from him on the ground. Puka Nacua is my wide receiver 4. And Cooper Kupp is my wide receiver 12. Both these guys being inside the top 12. Kobe Parkinson is my tight end 17. So you're probably wondering if I've got those guys high, why I've got Stafford at 18. And I think it's going to be a combination of cap yardage and turnovers. So I think those guys will get the majority of the yards, but I think Stafford will probably just about touch 300. But he's going to have no rushing yardage, and the only touchdowns, and I could see Williams getting touchdowns on the ground, which is why I've got him quite so high. So that's where I've got all those guys where they are, why Stafford is the way he is. It's kind of a confusing rank, so I felt I should explain it. Parkinson is my tight end 17. I think he'll get some work. If he gets in the box, then great, he'll usurp that, but that's kind of where he is. The Rams is my 30th ranked defense. I think they'll give up a lot of points. Carty is my kicker 23. Again, don't know a lot about him. Don't want to feel like I need to stick him in top 12 or 15, but he could score that and outweigh that quite easily. Here's the remaining kickers. We go to Monday Night Football. 49ers versus the Jets. The over-under is 44. The Jets are favored by 4. Right, start with the 49ers. Brock Purdy's my QB 24. That's going to shock a lot of people. This Jets defense is good. It's really, really good. I think Brock Purdy's going to struggle. CMC is my RB1. I think he's going to be the game breaker in this one for sure. I've got Deebo Samuel as my wide receiver 15 this week, and Brandon Ayuk is my wide receiver 24. Both will finish inside the top 24. Don't see either of them breaking into the top 12. Both of them will get a decent amount of work. Kill's my tight end 8. The 49ers are my 9th ranked defense this week. Moody is my 11th ranked kicker. So again, I think Purdy, he's got no legs. Don't know about the rushing. I think it's going to be more rushing touchdowns than passing touchdowns, but I think Samuel and Ayuk will get some volume. One of them might end up in the box, but I don't think you're going to see this huge 4 touchdown game from Brock Purdy, and that's why I bring him down to QB 24. Rodgers, on the other hand, is my QB 22. Breece Hall is my RB2. Garrett Wilson is my wide receiver 11. So I haven't ranked higher in this game than I do in my season-long ranks. I think it's a good game for him. I think they'll be behind. They'll need to chase the game. They'll go to Garrett Wilson, and they'll be quite happy to throw the ball, as well as also passing the ball a lot to Breece Hall. Mike Williams is my wide receiver 53. So I think you're going to see some good numbers from him potentially. And again, he could usurp that rank if fit and healthy. Tyler Conklin, my tight end 16, could get in the box, and therefore it's worth a watchful eye if he's on your waiver wire. See if you need to pick him up this week. The Jets are my DST 13. I do think they will get a turnover this week, but I also think they'll concede points that will just push them outside the top 12. But if you pick them, they're definitely startable. But Greg Zuerlein is my kicker 22. Whew, take a breath. There we go. That is a lot of players I've gone through, a lot of rankings, a lot of notes. It is a beast of a pod, this. I do it every week. I hope it helps you set your lineups. I've had people tell me how useful it is, and contextualizing the games and understanding how the games are going to go, and that's where you get the ranks. Happy to answer questions on all of these. But I feel like you get a pretty good feel for where I am and how I'm ranking them on a week-to-week basis, because the week-to-week ranks are different from the season-long ranks. You've got to take into consideration the game script, who's covering who, etc. So I hope this has been really useful. It's a lot of information, a lot of me talking for 52 odd minutes. But on the whole, it is very valuable. It should get your head right. If you're a DFS player, this should be useful. If you're a season-long player, a dynasty player, wherever your head is, if you're playing fantasy football this weekend, regardless of the medium, as I said, this is half-point PPR, but you can still apply the logic everywhere else into any format. So feel free to reach out to me if you want to see my ranks at 5 Yard Rush. If you've got other means of contacting me, you can contact me. I'm happy to ping over some ranks of where they are. They do change the week-long ranks, but you can also find them on Fantasy Pros. If you select the expert, they're on there as well. That's going to do it. It's a beast. If you want more up-to-date rankings and information, join the Patreon, patreon.com/5 Yard Rush. I also have these ranks in a sheet that you can use to modify scoring, etc. So I hope that's useful. Looking forward to playing fantasy football. Here we are, week 1 starts tonight. Set those lineups. Do not put your Thursday and Friday games in your flex. Avoid them at all cost. Make sure your flex is your Sunday, Monday games. But get ready for this. We're going to drop a special pod later on tonight. I'm not going to spoil any details, and hopefully it will be tonight. It's not recorded yet. It will be a pre-record. So if you do leave questions when it's live, I won't see them. So leave questions in the comments, and we'll pick them up in particular and go through there, but it should be a really, really good one. And I look forward to going through that, and then back tomorrow for more Good Morning Fantasy Football. As we get ready, we can review Thursday Night Football, and then we can also talk about what's going to happen for the weekend and get you fully ready and charged. And if you have any questions you want me to cover off tomorrow, put them in the YouTube comments for any of our shows this week, and I'll make sure I answer them tomorrow. But thank you again, Rush Nation, for a long show. Make sure you take your notes, bring your notepad, and don't forget, Rush Nation, as always, until next time, keep rushing.